The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Cole stepped onto station for the first time. He carried only a small bag over his shoulder. His clothes were simple and worn. His face showed the marks of a hard life. Deep lines around his eyes, a scar running from his left ear to his jaw, gray hair cut short in the military style he had never been able to shake. He was 53 years old. For 30 of those years, he had been a soldier in the Human Defense Corps. He had fought in the Great War against a war that had killed billions and stretched across 100 star systems. The war had ended 18 months ago. Humanity had won, but the cost had been terrible. Now was retired. He had credits saved up from his years of service. He had travel vouchers that the military gave to veterans. He had no family waiting for him back on Earth. No wife. No children. Just empty rooms and too many memories. So he had decided to travel, to see the galaxy he had spent decades fighting in, to find some peace if such a thing still existed for men like him. Station was a massive structure floating in the darkness between stars. It was a place where many species came together to trade and rest. The station was famous for its luxury hotels and fine restaurants. Did not care much about luxury. He just wanted a quiet room, a good meal, and a few days where nobody was trying to kill him. He walked through the station's main corridor, passing beings of a dozen different species. Tall creatures with clicking mandibles, short furry traders carrying bundles of goods, floating jellyfish beings that communicated through pulses of colored light, and everywhere, towering above the rest, there were impressive creatures. They stood over 2 meters tall, with powerful bodies covered in scales that shimmered like precious gems. Their faces were long and angular, with golden eyes and mouths full of sharp teeth. They walked with the confidence of beings who knew they were stronger and faster than almost everyone around them. Their ancestors had been great predators on their home world. That pride had never left them. Had never fought they had stayed neutral during the war, but he had heard stories about them. They considered themselves superior to most other species. They tolerated humans but did not respect them. To humans were small and weak and short-lived, barely worth noticing. Did not care what they thought. He had stopped caring about such things a long time ago. He found the hotel he was looking for, the Crimson Scale Resort. It was the finest establishment on the station, according to the travel guides. The building was tall and beautiful, made of black stone and decorated with gold. Great crystal lights hung from the ceiling of the entrance hall. The floors were polished so smooth that could see his reflection in them. Most of the guests in the lobby they wore expensive clothes and jewelry. They spoke in their rumbling language and laughed at jokes could not understand. A few other species were present, a group of merchants, a single diplomat which made his hand twitch toward a weapon he no longer carried. Old habits died hard. He walked to the front desk. A young female stood behind it. Her scales were the color of copper, and her uniform was perfectly pressed. She was busy with a data pad and did not look up when approached. He waited. She continued to ignore him. Cleared his throat. The receptionist finally raised her eyes. Her expression changed when she saw him. Her nostrils flared slightly. Her lips pressed together in a thin line. She looked at him the way someone might look at an insect that had crawled onto their dinner plate. Human, she said. The word was not a greeting. It was a statement of fact, delivered with clear distaste. Your kind usually stays in the lower district. The budget establishments are more suited to your needs. Kept his voice calm. I have a reservation, Suite 1147, 3 nights, paid in full. The receptionist's eyes narrowed. She looked down at her data pad and tapped at the screen. Her frown deepened as she the booking, watched her expression shift from disbelief to annoyance to something like anger. This must be a mistake, she said. No mistake, I booked it myself 6 weeks ago. Suite 1147 is a premium accommodation. It is typically reserved for distinguished guests. I paid the premium rate. The receptionist's claws tapped against the counter. She was clearly trying to find a reason to refuse him. Waited. He was very good at waiting. He had once spent 11 days in a collapsed bunker, waiting for rescue, surviving on rain, water, and emergency rations. A rude hotel worker was nothing. "Wait here," the receptionist finally said. "The manager will need to review your booking personally." She pressed a button on her console and spoke quickly in the language. Caught a few words: human, sweet, problem. The tone made the meaning clear enough. He stepped back from the desk and looked around the lobby. The other guests were watching him now, some with curiosity, some with amusement, a few with open hostility. He was the only human in the room, the only small, soft, breakable creature among these giants. Had felt this before, on a dozen different worlds, in 100 different situations. The sense of being surrounded by beings who thought they were better than him, who thought he was weak because he was human, who thought his small size and soft skin meant he was easy prey. They were always wrong. But was tired of fighting. He had come here for peace. He would get his room, eat his dinner, sleep in a comfortable bed, and move on to the next station in a few days. He would not cause trouble. He would not respond to insults. He was done with violence. Or so he thought. The door to the back office opened. A male emerged. He was taller than the receptionist, with scales of deep crimson and eyes like molten gold. He wore a manager's uniform decorated with symbols of rank. His posture radiated authority and arrogance in equal measure. He walked toward with slow, deliberate steps. Each footfall was heavy on the polished floor. He stopped directly in front of the human, using his full height to loom over him. His shadow fell across like a dark cloud. "I am," the said, "manager of this establishment. There seems to be an error with your booking." Looked up at him. "No error, suite 1147, 3 nights. That suite is reserved for preferred guests." I paid the preferred rate. Smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator looking at something small and helpless. "Let me be very clear, human. Your kind is tolerated here, not welcomed. I suggest you take a refund and find accommodations more suited to your station." Felt something stir inside him, something he had tried to bury, something cold and patient and very, very dangerous. He pushed it down. "I suggest you honor the reservation I paid for," he said quietly. The lobby had gone silent. Everyone was watching now. And Smile disappeared. Had managed the Crimson Scale Resort for 12 years. In that time, he had dealt with difficult guests of every species. He had handled complaints and demands and threats. He had removed troublemakers and refused service to those he deemed unworthy. He was the master of this establishment. His word was law within these walls. And now this human was challenging him. Looked down at the creature before him. It was so small, so fragile. Its skin was soft and easily damaged. Its bones were thin and breakable. It had no claws, no scales, no natural weapons of any kind. How such a species had ever survived long enough to reach the stars was a mystery that had never bothered to solve. He had heard stories about humans, of course. Everyone had. They had fought thee and won. They had survived a war that should have destroyed them. Some said they were dangerous. Some said they were tougher than they appeared, but had met humans before. Tourists, merchants, diplomats. They were always polite, always careful, always aware of their place in the hierarchy of species. This one was different. This one stood there with his face and his gray eyes and spoke too as if they were equals, as if a human had the right to demand anything from a. The disrespect was unbelievable. The arrogance was intolerable. Felt his blood grow hot. His claws extended slightly. His tail twitched behind him. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to put this creature in its place, to remind it what happened when prey forgot to show proper fear. The other guests were watching. His staff was watching. His reputation was at stake. "You should leave," said. His voice was low and dangerous. Now, before this becomes unpleasant. The human did not move. I paid for a room. I want my room. You want? Laughed. It was a harsh sound like stones grinding together. Humans do not want things in my hotel. Humans take what they are given and say thank you. That is how this works. Still the human did not back down. He just stood there looking up at with those pale gray eyes. There was no fear in them, no anger, nothing at all. They were empty eyes, dead eyes, the eyes of someone who had seen too much and stopped caring about anything. For just a moment, something in the back of his mind whispered a warning. Some ancient instinct that recognized danger even when it came in an unexpected form. But his pride was louder than his instincts. Last chance, growled. Walk away. No. The word was quiet, simple, final. Struck him. It was not a gentle blow. Put his full strength behind it, swinging his clawed hand across the human's face with enough force to send most species flying across the room. He felt the impact, felt his claws cut into soft flesh, felt the satisfaction of putting this arrogant creature in its place. The human's head snapped to the side. His body turned with the force of the blow. A line of blood appeared on his cheek, bright red against his pale skin. The lobby was completely silent. Everyone held their breath. The receptionist's eyes were wide. The guests had frozen in place. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Then the human turned his head back to face. And everything changed. Cole had been hit many times in his life. He had been shot, stabbed, burned, and beaten. He had been tortured by interrogators for 3 weeks before his unit rescued him. He had walked through fire and crawled through mud and kept fighting when his body was broken and bleeding. This slap was nothing. But it was enough. Felt the old machinery start up inside him. The machinery he had tried so hard to shut down. The training that had been beaten into him over 30 years of war. The cold, calculating part of his mind that saw everything as a tactical problem to be solved. He had come here for peace. He had wanted to rest. He had tried so hard to leave the soldier behind. But some things could not be left behind. Some parts of a person went too deep to ever be removed. Had made a mistake. He had looked at and seen a small, weak, harmless creature. He had not seen the truth. The truth was that Cole was one of the most dangerous human beings alive. He had earned the nickname the Constant during the war, because no matter what happened, no matter how bad things got, he was always there when the fighting was over. He was the soldier who never died, the officer who never retreated, the weapon that never broke. He had killed more enemies than he could count. He had survived battles that had destroyed entire divisions. He had walked out of situations that should have been impossible. And now this arrogant hotel manager had struck him in the face. Looked at with his gray eyes. He studied this posture, his weight distribution, the positions of his limbs, the angles of attack and defense. His mind was already calculating distances and timings, already planning the sequence of movements that would end this encounter. "You have 8 minutes," said. His voice was calm, quiet, almost friendly. Blinked, whatever reaction he had expected, it was not this. 8 minutes until what? Until I'm finished. Finished with what? Smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. There was no warmth in it, no humor. It was the smile of something that had been sleeping and was now awake. With all of you. Felt a chill run down his spine. For the first time he noticed something in the human's eyes, something old and cold and patient, something that looked at him not as a person but as a problem, an obstacle, a target. He tried to laugh. "One human against my entire staff. You are insane." "Maybe," agreed, "but I'm also very good at this." He moved. Had fought before. He had trained in the traditional combat styles of his people. He knew how fast he was, how strong he was, how deadly his claws could be. He was confident in his abilities. He never even saw the first blow coming. One moment the human was standing in front of him. The next moment there was a flash of movement and felt an explosion of pain in his elbow. He heard a crack. His arm bent the wrong way. He tried to scream, but something hit his throat and suddenly he could not breathe. He fell to his knees, gasping, clutching his broken arm. The world spun around him. Through the haze of pain, he saw the human standing over him, completely calm, not even breathing hard. "One down," said. 7 minutes and 41 seconds left. The security guards were already running toward them. They had no idea what was coming. 3 security guards rushed across the lobby toward. They were big males, trained and equipped with stun batons and sidearms. They had handled troublemakers before, drunk guests, angry customers, petty criminals. They were confident in their ability to subdue one small human. Their confidence lasted about 4 seconds. Watch them come. His mind was working in that cold, clear way that only happened during combat. Time seemed to slow down. Every detail became sharp and clear. The angle of the first guard's approach, the position of the second guard's weapon, the slight limp in the third guard's stride that suggested an old injury in his right leg. These were not soldiers. They were hotel security. They had never faced a real enemy. They relied on their size and their natural weapons to intimidate and overpower. They had no idea how to fight something that was not afraid of them. The first guard swung his stun baton in a wide arc, aiming for his head. It was a powerful blow, but it was slow and obvious. Stepped inside the swing, too close for the weapon to land properly. His hand shot out, grabbed the guard's wrist, twisted sharply. The guard's fingers opened in reflex, and the baton fell into his waiting palm. The second guard was reaching for his sidearm, was already moving. He swung the stolen baton in a tight, precise arc that connected with the guard's temple. The eyes rolled back, and he collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. The third guard had drawn his weapon, was inside his reach before he could aim. A quick strike to the wrist made him drop the gun. A knee to the stomach doubled him over. An elbow to the back of the neck put him on the floor. The first guard was still standing, still trying to process what had happened. Hit him twice, once in the throat, once behind the ear. He went down. 4 guards, including the manager, 19 seconds. Dropped the stun baton. It clattered on the polished floor, the sound echoing through the silent lobby. The guests were frozen in place. Their mouths hung open. Their eyes were wide with disbelief. They had just watched a single human defeat 4 in less time than it took to draw a breath. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. But it had happened. Looked around the lobby. More security would be coming. Alarms were probably already sounding in the back rooms. He could leave now. Walk out the door and disappear into the station. No one would stop him. But that was not the plan. These people needed to learn something. They needed to understand that humans were not weak, not helpless, not prey, and the only way to teach that lesson was to make it unforgettable. Started walking toward the back of the hotel. The Crimson Scale Resort was a large building with many floors. The lower levels held the restaurants and entertainment areas. The middle levels contained the guest rooms. The upper levels housed the offices and staff quarters. Security was spread throughout, with stations on multiple floors. Had memorized the layout during his shuttle ride. He always studied the places he visited. It was an old habit left over from the war. Know your environment, know your exits, know where the threats are likely to come from. Now that knowledge would serve a different purpose. He found the first security station on the second floor. 4 guards were there, gearing up in response to the alarm. They turned when walked through the door. Their faces showed confusion, then recognition, then fear. It was too late for fear. Moved through them like water through rocks. He did not use weapons. He did not need them. His hands and feet and elbows and knees were enough. He struck at joints and pressure points. He used their size against them, turning their strength into weakness. He was faster than they expected, more precise than they could handle. 12 seconds, 4 more guards down. He kept moving. The pattern repeated on every floor. Guards came at him in groups of 2 and 3 and 4. They attacked with claws and batons and fists. None of it mattered, was not fighting the way they expected. He was not trying to overpower them or match their strength. He was exploiting every weakness, every opening, every mistake. They were natural predators. They had evolved to hunt and kill, but they had never faced a species that had turned combat into a science. They had never fought humans. Humans were not strong, so they learned to fight smart. Humans were not fast, so they learned to predict and prepare. Humans were not tough, so they learned to end fights quickly before their enemies could hurt them. 30 years of war had made very good at ending fights. On the 4th floor, he found the enforcement office. 7 officers were there, preparing to deploy in force. They had body armor and real weapons. They looked at with hatred in their eyes. "You will pay for this," one of them snarled. "When we are done with you, there will not be enough left to bury." Did not answer. Words were a waste of energy. The fight lasted 43 seconds. It was the longest of the day. When it was over, 7 officers lay on the floor, groaning and bleeding but alive. Had 3 new cuts on his arms where claws had found their mark. He ignored the wounds. They were superficial. He had survived much worse. He checked the time. 4 minutes and 12 seconds had passed. He was ahead of schedule. The head of security found him in the stairwell between the 5th and 6th floors. This was different from the others, older. His scales were marked with the patterns of a warrior. His eyes held something that the younger guards lacked: experience, caution, respect for danger. "You are the human from the lobby," the security chief said. He did not attack immediately. He was studying, measuring him. "Yes. You have injured many of my people. They are alive. They will recover." The security chief nodded slowly. "You could have killed them. You chose not to. Why?" "I am not here to kill anyone. I am here to teach a lesson." "What lesson?" "That we are not weak, that we are not prey, that if you hurt us we will hurt you back, harder." The security chief was quiet for a moment. Then he settled into a fighting stance. "I understand, but I cannot let you pass. My honor demands that I try to stop you." Respected that. This was not fighting out of arrogance or hatred. He was fighting because it was his duty, because he had given his word to protect this place. "I understand," said. "I will try to make it quick." The security chief was good, better than the others. His attacks were precise and controlled. His defenses were solid. He read movements and adapted. He lasted almost a full minute. But almost was not enough. A fractured kneecap ended the fight. The security chief fell to the ground, unable to stand. He looked up with pain in his eyes, but also something like curiosity. "The stories about your kind," he said through gritted teeth. "I always thought they were exaggerated." "They're not. I see that now." The security chief closed his eyes. "The executive level is 2 floors up. They have barricaded themselves in the boardroom, 12 guards, military weapons." Nodded. "Thank you." "Do not thank me. I have failed in my duty, but perhaps—" He opened his eyes again. "Perhaps this lesson was needed. Perhaps we have forgotten something important." "Maybe," said. "Rest now. Medical teams will be here soon." He continued up the stairs. 2 floors to go. 3 minutes and 48 seconds left. Right on schedule. The executive level of the Crimson Scale Resort was designed to impress. Wide hallways with thick carpets. Walls decorated with artwork from a dozen worlds. Doors made of polished wood and metal. Everything spoke of wealth and power and status. Walked through it without slowing down. The security forces had concentrated here. He could see them ahead at the end of the main corridor. 12 guards formed a defensive line in front of the boardroom doors. They had arranged furniture as barriers. They held military-grade weapons, plasma rifles, shock cannons, equipment meant for real combat, not crowd control. They had learned from the failures of their colleagues. They were not going to underestimate him. Stopped about 20 meters away from their position, he studied their formation. Their fields of fire overlapped. Their cover was solid. If he tried to charge them directly, they would cut him down before he got halfway. A frontal assault would not work. Good thing he had no intention of making a frontal assault. Had noticed something during his walk through the building. The Crimson Scale Resort was old. It had been built when the station was first constructed over a century ago. The architecture was beautiful, but it had weaknesses. Weaknesses that a soldier's eye could find. The ceiling panels, for example. They were decorative, not structural. They hid the ventilation systems and power conduits that ran above them, and they were not designed to support weight. But they would support weight for a few seconds, long enough. Moved to the wall. There was a decorative pillar there, covered in carved stone. He climbed it quickly, using the carvings as handholds. At the top, he pushed aside a ceiling panel and pulled himself into the space above. It was dark and cramped. Pipes and wires ran in every direction. The air was stale and warm. Did not mind. He had crawled through much worse places during the war. He moved forward, staying on the support beams where the structure was strongest. Below him, he could hear the guards talking. They were nervous. They had heard what happened on the lower floors. They knew what was coming for them. They just did not know from where. Counted his movements carefully. He needed to be directly above their position. He needed to be fast. He needed to be precise. He found the right spot. Through a crack in the ceiling panels, he could see the guards below. They were watching the corridor, waiting for him to appear. Their backs were to the ceiling. Waited, he controlled his breathing. He felt his heartbeat slow to a steady rhythm. Then he dropped. The ceiling panel shattered as he came through it. He landed in the middle of their formation, between two guards who had no time to react. His elbow caught the first one in the throat. His foot swept the legs out from under the second. The other guards tried to turn, tried to aim their weapons, but was too close. He was inside their formation, moving between them like a ghost. Plasma rifles were useless at close range. Shock cannons needed time to charge. By the time they adjusted, it was too late. Did not fight them one at a time. He fought the entire group at once. He kept moving, never staying in one place long enough to become a target. He struck from unexpected angles. He used the guards' own bodies as shields against their comrades. It was chaos. It was confusion. It was exactly what wanted. A plasma bolt sizzled past his ear. He grabbed the arm of the guard who fired it, twisted, and redirected the weapon into another guard's leg. The wounded screamed and fell. A shock cannon hummed as it charged, kicked the guard holding it, sending him stumbling backward into two of his colleagues. The cannon discharged into the ceiling, showering everyone with sparks. Claws raked across back. He felt the pain but ignored it. Pain was just information. It told him where the enemy was. He spun, caught the attacking guard's arm, and used his own momentum to throw him into the makeshift barricade. The fight lasted less than a minute. When it was over, 12 guards lay scattered across the corridor. Some were unconscious. Some were groaning in pain. None of them were dead, had been careful about that. Broken bones would heal. Bruises would fade. The lesson would remain. He was bleeding from several wounds now. His back, his arms, a cut on his forehead that dripped blood into his left eye. He wiped it away with the back of his hand. 7 minutes and 43 seconds, 17 seconds ahead of schedule. The boardroom doors stood before him. They were thick and heavy, designed to provide privacy and security for important meetings. Could hear movement on the other side. Voices, frightened whispers. He tried the handle, locked. That was not a problem. Examined the door. It was strong, but it was not designed to stop a determined assault. The hinges were the weak point. 3 quick kicks, precisely placed, and the door came off its frame. He pushed it aside and stepped into the boardroom. The room was large and elegant. A long table dominated the center, now overturned and pushed against the far wall. Behind it huddled a group of about a dozen of them. They wore expensive clothes and jewelry. Their scales were bright and well-groomed. They were executives and directors and managers, the people who ran this hotel and made its decisions. They looked at with terror in their eyes. Among them he spotted. The manager had managed to make it here despite his injuries. His arm hung at an unnatural angle and his throat was bruised and swollen. But his eyes still held a spark of defiance. Walked into the center of the room. He left bloody footprints on the expensive carpet. He did not care. He checked the time again. 8 minutes exactly. Right on schedule, he said. No one answered. They were too afraid to speak. Looked around the room. He saw their fear, their confusion, their disbelief. A single human had walked through their entire security force in 8 minutes. Everything they believed about humans had just been proven wrong. Good. Now they were ready to listen. I am going to talk now, said. You are going to listen, and when I am done, you are going to think very carefully about what I have said. Do you understand? Slow nods from around the room, even managed a slight movement of his head. Good, then let me tell you a story. Let me tell you about humans. Let me tell you why you should never, ever make the mistake of thinking we are weak. He found a chair that had not been overturned. He sat down in it, casual and calm, as if he were starting a normal conversation. Outside the room, in the corridor, the groans of the defeated guards continued. Inside the room, a dozen executives waited in silence for the human to speak. And Cole began to teach them the truth about his species. Sat in the chair and looked at the frightened executives. Blood dripped from his wounds onto the expensive carpet. He did not bother to wipe it away. Let them see it. Let them understand that he had paid a price to deliver this message. I want to start by making something clear, said. His voice was calm and quiet, almost gentle. Everyone in this building is still alive. I did not kill anyone I could have. It would have been easier, actually. But that was not the point. He paused to let that sink in. The point was to teach you something. Something that your species seems to have forgotten. Something that you need to understand if we are going to share this galaxy in peace. He leaned forward in his chair. You look at humans and you see weakness. I understand that. We are small. We are soft. We do not have claws or scales or natural weapons. We live short lives compared to most species. On the surface, we look like easy prey. Tried to speak. His damaged throat only produced a rasping sound. Waited until he fell silent, then continued. But here is what you do not understand. We are not weak because of those things. We are strong because of them. Confused looks from around the room. That was fine, he would explain. For millions of years, humans lived on a dangerous world. Predators with teeth and claws hunted us. The weather tried to kill us. Disease tried to kill us. Everything tried to kill us. We had no natural advantages. No armor, no venom, no speed. Nothing but our brains and our hands and our stubbornness. He held up his hands, showing them the blood and the calluses and the scars. So we adapted. We learned to make tools because our claws were not sharp enough. We learned to make weapons because our teeth were not strong enough. We learned to think and plan and prepare because we could not afford to fight fair. He stood up from the chair and began to walk slowly around the room. When we reached the stars, we found other species. Bigger species, stronger species, faster species. Species like you who looked at us and saw nothing threatening, nothing worth respecting. He stopped in front of. Then came do you know about the war? Nods from around the room. Everyone knew about the war. They were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They had conquered 100 worlds. They had enslaved a dozen civilizations. When they came for humanity, everyone expected us to fall. The odds were impossible. Their technology was better. Their soldiers were stronger. Their numbers were greater. His eyes grew distant for a moment, lost in memories. The war lasted 30 years. 30 years of fighting against an enemy that should have crushed us in months. 30 years of dying and losing and suffering. Billions of humans died. Entire worlds burned. His eyes focused again, sharp and cold. But we did not break. We did not surrender. We did not stop fighting. And in the end, they were destroyed, not defeated, not pushed back, destroyed. Their civilization is gone. Their empire is dust. And humanity is still here. He turned to address the entire room. Do you know what they called us by the end of the war? They called us the unkillable. Not because we were hard to wound, not because we survived every attack, but because no matter how many of us died, there were always more. No matter how badly we lost, we came back for another fight. We wore them down. We exhausted them. We made them pay for every world they took until they could not pay anymore. He walked back to the center of the room. That is what humans are. We are not the biggest or the strongest or the fastest, but we are the ones who never stop. We are the ones who adapt and learn and overcome. We are the ones who turn disadvantages into advantages and weakness into strength. He pointed at, your manager struck me because he thought I would not fight back. He thought I was weak and helpless and afraid. He thought he could hurt me without consequences. He spread his arms to indicate the chaos around them. The injured guards, the shattered door, the terrified executives. This is the consequence. One human, 8 minutes, your entire security force, and I was holding back. I was being gentle because I did not come here to kill. I came here to teach. He walked toward the broken doorway. I am going to leave now. I am going to go back to the lobby. And I am going to wait for someone to give me the key to Suite 1147, the room I paid for, the room I was promised. He stopped at the door and looked back. I suggest you also prepare a very nice apology, and perhaps some compensation for my inconvenience. A complimentary upgrade would be appropriate. Silence from the executives, then slowly one of them nodded, then another, then all of them. Good, said. I am glad we understand each other now. He walked out of the boardroom and back through the corridor. The defeated guards were starting to stir. Medical teams would be arriving soon. Station security would want to ask questions. There would be reports and investigations and official inquiries. Did not care. He had done nothing wrong. He had defended himself against an assault. Everything that followed was self-defense. Any court in human space would agree, and they would not want the publicity of admitting what had happened here. They would want this to stay quiet. They would want to make this problem go away. And the easiest way to do that was to give exactly what he wanted. He took the elevator back down to the lobby. It was empty now. The guests had fled. The staff had hidden. Only the 4 guards he had defeated at the beginning remained, sitting against the walls with dazed expressions. Found a comfortable chair and sat down to wait. 20 minutes later, a junior manager approached him. She was a young female with blue scales and nervous eyes. She held a key card in her trembling hands. Suite 1147, she said. Upgraded to the presidential level. 3 nights. Complimentary, with the sincere apologies of the Crimson Scale Resort. Took the key card, thank you. Is there anything else you require? Yes, I would like dinner sent to my room, something simple, a steak if you have it, and a bottle of whatever wine you recommend. Of course, right away. Stood up, he walked toward the elevators. At the door, he paused and looked back at the young manager. One more thing. Yes. Please tell your superiors that I am not angry. I do not hold grudges. What happened today was a lesson, not a punishment. If they learn from it, we can all move forward peacefully. The manager nodded quickly. "I will tell them." "Good." Stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. He leaned against the wall and allowed himself a small smile. The steak was excellent. The wine was better. And the bed in Suite 1147 was the most comfortable had slept in for years. 3 months later, the story of what happened at the Crimson Scale Resort had spread across the galaxy. The Hospitality Consortium issued a formal apology to all human guests. New policies were put in place to prevent discrimination. Was quietly transferred to a remote administrative post where he would never interact with guests again. And in veteran communities across human space, the tale of Cole became legend. One human, 8 minutes, an entire hotel crew. It was a reminder of what they were, a reminder of what they could do, a reminder that no matter how the galaxy looked at them, humans were not to be underestimated. Himself continued his travels. He visited a dozen more worlds. He found the peace he was looking for most of the time. Occasionally, someone would recognize him and buy him a drink. He always accepted. He always listened to their stories. He always reminded them of the same simple truth. We are not the biggest, we are not the strongest, we are not the fastest. But we are human. And that is enough.